Yeah, so I'm Jason Masker. Been in the consulting tech industry for the last 20 years, focused on cyber and data solutions. So um, Dan is with Ford and at the center of everything they're doing around cybersecurity and security operations. Dan, you want to give a little bit more of your background and role?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Yeah, I work for Ford Motor Company in product cybersecurity. We love what we do over here. We've been involved, or I've been involved with API development and API security, going on about 8 years. And these days, I help set API security policy. I assist in running the bug bounty program and responsible for API monitoring as well as connected vehicle monitoring and manage four other security related applications to help with the triage process. So,
Yeah, 8 years. That's a lifetime in cyber. We should have early retirements for this stuff.
yeah.
So I'll start out by just giving a little bit more background on Upstream so that you guys know who we are. We work in the mobility space. Our flagship application is a cybersecurity application. So we have an application specific to API security and also to vehicle mobile mobility security. We're working with over 17 of the OEMs, protecting over 30 million connected assets, vehicles these days, and lots of API transactions and messages per month in scope there. And it's interesting. I just was speaking at another API conference to talk in these settings on why we want to talk about connected vehicles, because they're actually quite complex ecosystems, lots of APIs involved. This is just looking at the number of lines of code, that are involved in each of these things that we know about very well. Android down there at 12 million. When you get into vehicles, between the on the vehicle in the cloud, there's like lots of systems that are making these work. We're up to 150 million lines of code that you might see on a, and that's a guess, Dan. You don't have to keep me accurate, but the 300 million when you get into the self-driving and autonomous vehicles. Upstream publishes a cybersecurity report on the state of the industry, and we've been doing this and tracking since 2019. And you can see that there's a great increase. A lot of functionality rolled out very quickly, and we definitely have the visibility now where attackers are kind of coming in fuzzing, and then a turn a little bit this past year for mobility specific ransomware attacks and some really malicious things of that nature. More than 65% of these of the activity that we see out there is black hat in nature. They are looking for financial gain or to do some type of harm. When you look at the breakdown of the activity, it's all API. So like the top three, the infotainment is a big center in the vehicles of where all of this is kind of coming and going through. It's the user interface for a lot of things in the vehicle. API, directly is 17%, but telematics and cloud, which is more of a specific to the auto mobility industry, is a large portion of this as well. We just have a ton of data coming off these vehicles and commands going down to them, updates going down to them, recalls. A lot of times these days you'll see handled with an over-the-air update. So that world has changed very quickly in the space. And when you look at the surface area, these complex, you've got autonomous vehicles, EVs, EV chargers, lots of internal APIs, back-end systems, lots of external APIs front end, the things that we see when we're interacting with our vehicles, when we're interacting with the application to start our car or whatever we're doing. All of those amount to additional surface area and potential for attack. When you have this kind of a system like we're looking at here, the blind spot from our perspective at Upstream has always been context. The reason it gets very difficult to protect these APIs just with a WAF or just with a firewall is you might see that message coming through, but you're lacking the context. What was going on with the vehicle before? What's going on after? What's its current state? So we take in all of these data sources and sort of help to raise these alerts and threats as we see them, because we're building digital twins, unique VIN specific digital twins of all the vehicles, of all the consumers, and kind of correlating and now using ML models and AI to look across all of this. Um, so with that as kind of a backdrop, Dan, you know, give us some of your perspective here from the Ford side on what this landscape looks like to you, and how's it
Yeah,
going?
sure. Yeah, thanks. No, I'm glad to be here. So typically, when you have presentations with vendors, you're like, okay, right, this is great, but we're in this case, I'm speaking, not from promoting a vendor or the product, but from what we're, actually seeing, some of what we're doing without trying to give you what we're actually doing. But
Yeah,
yeah, APIs are everywhere, as you guys, know. Probably every company, has many applications just like us. Most processes even rely on the APIs. So it, essentially, APIs are the business's backbone, right? The security is critical. And the main questions are, do you even know what your APIs are in your company, or who calls them? And even if you can see who calls them, are they even authorized to call you? How do you know they're not unauthorized third-party integrations trying to just spoof basically your applications? So
that's
under
a common thing that comes up, right, Dan? As you build
yeah.
these APIs for your apps to consume, but by nature they have to be on the internet, right? So we treat them kind of as private backend. We never published this API. We never asked anyone to use it, but you look out there, and sure enough, people are using it for all sorts of reasons, right?
Exactly, and understanding. And I'll talk about it a little bit later too. Even context, right, of how they're supposed to be called and how many requests you're supposed to expect, all have a play in that. But understanding that landscape, the dynamics of it, how it works. I mean, even owners, it's key for protecting and even responding to whether it's an incident, a threat, or just some sort of config issue, right? If you don't know what APIs you have, how can you be confident in the security that you're enforcing, right? And a lot of the challenge, right, is the scale even of this. So hacking APIs, right? I mean, I'm not trying to downplay this, right? By all means, like to hack an API, it's a skill, but because you can do it on your computer and you have the power of YouTube and tools you can find online, right? The barrier to entry in that aspect is fairly low, right? Technically, like anybody can do it. Now, whether you're good or not at it is a different thing altogether. But just APIs expose logic, they expose data, and they constantly change. It's a big dynamic attack surface, and we see everything from just basic scanning and script noise, just the standard perp suite, script hitting every API we have, to complex business logic attacks. So, how do you protect yourself? Well, of course, the shift left mantra is important, right? Build security in early. It's essential. It's not the end all be all, right? You also need, with such high volumes, you can't just expect, hey, we have this policy of shift left, I think we're okay, right? You need to have that shift right mentality too. You need live visibility. You need live response. I mean, it's in a company like ours, it's a non-negotiable, right? You need to be able to see your production transactions in real time so that you can react and react fast to any sort of incident that might present itself.
It makes me think of trust but verify, right? Of course, we want to be coding the APIs securely, but if you're not watching, they're changing very fast. It's easy to let something slip through, and you've got a
Yeah.
vulnerable API out there. So
And we're realists too, right? We understand that for all the development teams we have, that security is not always top of mind, especially when the business is the one releasing the features. If they're saying, "Hey, I've got this awesome feature to, acquire or make the customer experience better," and they say, "Oh, but the other items, the security thing, they're probably going to push it, right?" Obviously,
yeah,
the security doesn't give them value, right? But you've got to find that critical balance. But if, like we said, if you can't see that data, right, the last line of defense is the monitoring, right? What's after that? I mean, if it's not caught by any sort of monitoring, you either maybe never find out about it, or you find out about it, but it's because it was on the dark web or in the front page of the newspaper,
Yeah.
right?
Hopefully that's not how you're finding out.
Right, right. And then finally, we have, our, I'll call it the specialized focus, right? The connected vehicle security side. Tens of billions of vehicle messages a month, huge volume, unique data sets, right? It's not typically, necessarily a structured data set in all aspects. Um, and depending on the vehicle model, right, the structure of it could change for even the vehicle architecture. I'm sorry. So even from year over year, the same vehicle, same trim, everything, it could behave completely different, right? But with
Yeah.
connected vehicles, the one thing that we need to be cognizant of is that there could be physical implications. It's not just about data breaches, right? We're looking to make sure that we have the specialized capability beyond a traditional SOC, right? We have a VSOC, a vehicle SOC. Uh, we don't view those as the same, right? They are two completely different entities, right?
Yeah,
You
one
need
incorporates mobility and safety and
right.
things like that that are a concern, right? Like these are people driving down the road at 70 miles an hour, right?
Right. And it's not necessarily a plug and play thing either, Jason, right? Because you need to have the deep vehicle system knowledge. You need to understand that those architectures are different, that while you're detecting on something on this architecture, it behaves differently on this. So I need to also detect a different unique style on this type of architecture. And obviously custom detection logic. There are very few out of the box socks that can just plug and play with vehicle data, right? But the vehicle sock can help you spot those odd patterns that you're looking for. And where we get crazy is then when you can start blending data. So we talked about context a little bit ago. So blending other data sources with that vehicle data to provide a better picture, right? Like bringing in maps, pinning stuff, events and stuff on a map, or
Yeah.
taking API related data, merging that into an alert, right? That you can see a more complete picture, right? The holistic picture. So, overall, right, securing APIs and vehicles at scale is pretty complex, as I'm sure it is in your companies as well. It's not just I have this one thing, I'm good, right? You need a layered approach, and especially in our case, a specialized capability like a VSOC. And you need the continuous vigilance, you need the understanding of the system dynamics. Nothing is static. It shouldn't be. You got to continue to evolve. So
And like you just mentioned, Dan, right? The understanding of the business flows, right? The context of what things are. This is a vehicle. This is a consumer. This is how they interact. Um, is all very important in that space.
yeah, and I'll just end with this on that note, right? We have our cybersecurity team is broken up into multiple cybersecurity teams, and they all are working with different areas of the business and IT and understanding what's next, what's coming, which is also key because then what we if we weren't doing that, then we only find out about things as like a surprise, right? Where,
Yeah.
oh, they just launched this new architecture we didn't know about. But the way that we're structured, we have these different groups working with the different product development teams, API teams, whatever it may be. We get the heads up so we can start planning early. So by the time that new thing is launched, we're ready for it.
So
And
that's a
and that's
really good
awesome.
point, Dan, is making security, I understanding that that's a stakeholder and it just has a totally different focus to bring them in early, so that you guys do get that heads up because you're right. You get surprised with a complete change of architecture. That's all driven by what we want as functionality in our vehicles and these sort of quality of life improvements, right? But you got to be prepared to protect it.
Yep.
All right. So just to give a little bit of a reality check, and I want to share with the audience here some of what we see out there. Some of what some recent things that are happening. And so the first one I'll talk about here is an API vulnerability that basically allowed remote access to driver and vehicle data. And we're not naming names here. We kind of obscured them to protect the innocent or the guilty, however you want to see that. But the breach was basically a vulnerable OEM API that gave access to real-time live vehicle location and access across the U.S., Canada, and Japan for this particular OEM. So that what that looks like, from in the context of the API hacking, is some basic fuzzing to go out and discover and find these, and it's the usual suspects, OWASP API top 10, unauthenticated, unauthorized API, right? You've got an unchecked endpoint there. Somebody's fuzzing around and they find it, and they basically are able to, okay, your password resets. Always check password resets. This is a common theme. It's easy to make mistakes there in how you're handling that. And they were actually able to reset a password and bypass two-factor at the same time, and run remote commands and see vehicle locations. Um, we have another one here that, and we talked about this, and this is the kind of where API enters on the attacking, or I'm sorry, AI enters as a force on the attacking side, is things can be so quick, where we actually saw a researcher develop an app that they could walk around a parking lot, enter license plate numbers, and take over vehicles. Just go shop for your car in the mall parking lot there. And the way, the anatomy of something like this, the way it looks is very similar. They basically exploited, being able to come into a dealer portal and set themselves up as basically a fake dealer. Dealers have access to all kinds of things. They're assigning the initial ownership of the vehicle in that association. So not only were they able to do that, but dealers are hooked into all kinds of things like DMVs and license plates to VINs, and able to go into Claude or to one of the AI tools and very quickly make a pretty sophisticated tool to just pull a license plate, take it over with this fake dealer that they developed, and right there have the ability to unlock and start the vehicle. Um, so the with the extent of this ecosystem, that's what I think it's important to understand, is that there's some wide scale impact here. Um, that you're right, Dan. I mean, you want to definitely have security at the forefront as you're coding these things. That this is very important. It's got to be protected, but also to be monitoring, to see the stuff as it's happening. You should notice when suddenly unusual behavior is happening. You shouldn't have a dealer suddenly, that didn't exist yesterday, assigning ownership to hundreds of vehicles, right? Um, so these are just things that when you do have that custom capability to understand your business logic and rules and double check and verify them, that kind of comes into context. So Dan, thoughts on AI? I talked about it a little bit from the attacking perspective, and it's definitely you know emphasized the threat here, and it's become more significant. We're not just dealing with the experts anymore. The bar is kind of lowered to that point of entry where, hey, I just want to mess around, and I can kind of get an AI to have this expertise for me for something I want to code. Um, how are you seeing that on the defensive side at Ford?
Yeah. So good point here. AI has come a long way and it's still progressing. I mean, each day, each week, I feel like there's a new model out, right? That's surpassing all the metrics of the next. But before I get into that, like let's talk about data volumes, right? When you're able to understand your API, surface, right? You're cataloging all of your APIs, like the volume is immense when you're able to wrangle all the APIs you have, all the traffic you're getting. We're getting tens of billions of transactions per month, right? It's super noisy. Hundreds of alerts daily, huge volumes. I'll tell you what, my team does not get any bigger, but the alert volume does, right? And getting getting the alerts is easy. Making sense of it, that's really the hard part, right? We need to be able to cut the noise. We need to be able to focus the analysts where they need to go. We need to find the needle in the haystack out of all the data and alerts, right? If an API is handling something appropriately, an incident, is that where I really need my analysts to be focusing their time? Maybe not, right? I guess it just depends on what's going on in the ecosystem, right? But the need for efficiency and context accuracy, I mean, it requires focus. You need to supplement your analysts with processes and automation for the triage process, for correlation of data, and even prioritization, right? They need the context of the alert, of the attack. I mean, just raising an alert with no additional other info, no understanding of the API, no understanding of the attack, how are they going to succeed, right? You need to understand an API, what it does, who are its users, what does normal look like, and at that point, you can spot the abnormal, right? You can gain the signal to noise efficiency when you understand the behavior of an API. And it can be difficult at scale, but it also then gives you the ability to start fine tuning your detectors easier, right? And that should be a
Yeah.
constant process as well.
I guess when you think about it, the sheer volume of just the different APIs involved, the rate at which they're changing, to expect a security analyst to be up to date to go through all of this manually, they definitely need some tools to kind of help along, right? To keep up.
Yeah. I mean, deployments happen every day, sometimes multiple times a day. New APIs are deployed each day, right? There's thousands of them and they each have their own unique normal, right? So it takes a lot to sort through that and really understand, hey, what am I looking for? And sometimes obviously you can't do it all at once, but you need to prioritize what's important to us, right? What am I looking for? But here's how I guess AI can become essential, right? It How can you achieve the scale and context, right? AI here isn't just helpful, right? It's essential to that. But I do want to stress, I'm not one of those that, hey, AI is the end all be all. No, not at all. It is not a replacement, at least not yet. It's there to supplement things, right? Supplement your processes, your platforms, your services, and your analysts. It's not to be your application for monitoring, and that's all it does. I mean, if a vendor came to me and said, "Hey, we have AI and AI, LLM, learning, all of that. We can solve all your problems, right? You need a very small team to manage this." I would be very skeptical, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you need control of your platform, right? It requires constant fine tuning. I just talked about APIs being deployed sometimes twice a day, right?
Yeah.
More than that. You need the fine tuning, you need the learning, you need to adjust the prompts, you need the constant feedback loop to even the AI to help it progress further, right? If you have AI assessing, let's say, an alert before it even gets to the analyst, and the analyst picks it up and AI says this is a false positive, you're looking at that like there's absolutely no way, right? If you
Yeah.
can't give the feedback loop to the AI or the platform, it's a failure right off the bat because it's never going to learn that no, you got this wrong, right? And it needs to be redone, or there's an efficiency that needs to be had, right? Fine tuning needs to be done. And of course, when the models redeploy, your prompts you were using in the previous version might act or behave differently in the next one, right? So how are you going to just rely on, in my opinion, you can't just rely on an outside company to come in, set it up for you, say, oh, we'll manage it, we'll handle it, right? They don't even have the context of your APIs at your company. Only your SMEs do.
Yeah, I guess that's important to keep in mind is AI can be trained really well on something, right? But it has to learn something new just like we do. So
Right.
that this is not a, we replace all our jobs with AI and go home. It's a continuous process where somewhere you do need that human in the loop to continually get that good feedback so the model's improving
Absolutely.
and doing a better job, just like we do with training a team of humans, right? So um, there's definitely that process involved in well as well.
Yeah, and actually, I was just going to start bringing up, comparing AI to the human, right? The human analyst. If you have 1,000 alerts that a human needs to process or go through, right? They have to go through those sequentially. It'll take them a long time to process those.
You got
AI,
to
on the
think about
other,
things like fatigue, right? Like alert
oh
fatigue. You're
yeah,
just looking at,
absolutely,
if you look at 800 false positives, are you going to be queued on the one, right?
right.
So.
eventually you're going, it's just human nature, right? You're going to go into that mind numbing phase and you're just kind of clicking through at a certain point, right? There's nothing here, false positive after false positive. Whereas the AI can go through tons of events, identify subtle patterns, correlate data, and do it all simultaneously. Analysts will pick up an alert. Maybe it's a script attack, right? And there's thousands of transactions. That's extremely time consuming for an analyst because an analyst is going to go through that line by line. So here, I'll give you an example. So we were tracking as an exercise with the team someone that was obviously hacking in our system, right? So we had like 3,000 lines of code, and I said, "Hey guys, let's go through the data set." We pulled the raw data, started going line by line, and saying, "Okay, look, they're manipulating this parameter here. We should see a 403, right? And our API should handle this, assuming we did it right." It took
Yeah.
us to get through half of that file 45 minutes, and we're going line by line, and we're trying to spot it. AI can go and spot it or identify it in a within under a minute. It can analyze the same file, right? It's just some things it's better prone to do.
And that's been a theme as well. As I was at a think tank recently, we're talking about like with the newer things, AI might hallucinate the reasoning, or but a lot of times, even when it does that, it is narrowing down where to look, right? It might think, okay,
Yeah,
this is an injection I've seen before, and it's not quite, but it's telling you right where to look, right? And that's the been a really powerful impact that we've seen.
yeah. Yeah, it can help an analyst definitely focus in, even if it doesn't have the right answers, right? You want to make sure again your prompts are set up right.
Yeah.
Hey, don't guess or speculate. If you don't know, just tell us you don't
Right.
know,
Yeah.
right? You can't tell.
I'm not looking for a
Um,
science fiction, narrative here. Don't invent a story.
exactly. Right. You're here to help our analysts come to the proper conclusion, not be the replacement of the analyst just to get through the alert. So,
Yeah.
but it does have some benefits, right? It can, like I said, it can review that raw data really quick. It can actually go back and recheck previous incidents that have already been done by analysts. So, hey, did the analyst come up with a different conclusion than what the AI did when it went back and did it? If
Right.
so, flag it, right?
Yep. That gets
It can
flagged for
flag
training.
those, yeah, it can flag those missed issues from the previously triaged alerts, and you can have it surface the most likely threats, right? So when I was saying earlier about the needle in the haystack, if you can have AI kind of do some pre-work for the analyst and say, hey, here's this attack, but look here specifically, this is where I think, you should be looking. I mean, that's great, right?
Yeah.
And that can really help focus your analyst time on the best. So
Hey guys, I'm so sorry to interrupt. This has been so fun to watch. They're trying to bring the tracks back together for intermission. I wanted to see if there was just anything else you guys wanted to cover at the end here, or outro points you wanted to hit before they do that.
Did you want to speak to your goals with AI agents, Dan?
yeah, sure. Let's just skip to that, and I'll make it short and sweet here.
Awesome. And then I think track one is getting going on Scott Bly's talk as well, just so everyone knows. So after we're done here, just click over to stages and head to talk or stage one for the next hour or so, and then we'll split back into two tracks again after that. Thank you guys again. Sorry for interrupting.
All right, thanks, Jesse. All right, do you want to go to my slide or you want to talk to this one?
Yeah, so I can speak to this one a little bit. One of the areas that we're focused is exactly what you're talking about, Dan, where we're trying to shift that boring work, similar to the previous talk, right? The boring stuff can get done by AI and free up time and resources on the security operations to really do the higher level tasks, and to be able to dig in and say, okay, now we don't have to spend 45 minutes looking line by line through the code. We can focus on the fix, right? And and do that. And then I know, this is just reiterating, what we've come through to, we've got some of the ways we're using agents. The data sources are changing all the time. Well, we found you can free up like a data analyst one by having that kind of auto parse and sort of get ahead of those changes as they're occurring, and bring in a better data schema there. And it's similar on the security operations, where with all this alert fatigue, high number of false positives, we can take and reduce that when you have that, some context and some reasoning up front to help effectively triage and take some of that noise and fatigue, kind of down. So takeaways, I know we've got to wrap it. Dan, final thoughts on, what's next, what's most important?
Yeah. So, yeah, I'll just hit a couple of points of each of these sections real quick. So, we know the attackers are going to use AI, right? It's inevitable. Why wouldn't you? They can process, like we could on the defense, they can process on the offense hundreds of thousands of transactions themselves simultaneously. They can find the vulnerabilities quickly and at scale. Imagine Alamir's presentation right before us, right? What if you could just use AI and send it off of that and just find those vulnerabilities that he did, right? I mean, I would imagine that that's where it's going to go. Attacks will be smarter, faster, and harder to detect with traditional methods. My second point was I talked about understanding your API landscape. 100%, you have to know what you have in order to protect it. And then I hate to say it, but you have to say it. You need governance around those APIs. What are the controls in place? Right? And more importantly, do you have a grasp on the teams that aren't able to implement those controls? Do you know who those teams are so you can watch those even more stringently? Right. And then obviously talking about context, integration of different data streams. We talked about the vehicle SOC and bringing in and marrying up even API related API traffic,
Yeah.
right? To get that holistic picture. And one of the biggest thing from the protection side, I think, is going to be the AI and machine learning in the defense, right? Not just in the VSOC, but in the API SOCs and all of them, right? They can help you spot those complex patterns much easier, much quicker. It can help you prioritize those alerts, correlate data, analyze attack paths, and provide context for analysts. And then shift left in automation, right? It's important that teams are implementing security controls up front so that you're trying to prevent them, and then monitoring is your last resort. Integrating security early in the design build aspect, automated quality gates for that though too, right? Can you fail a team's pipeline if they don't meet certain security standards, right? And so that vulnerable code or that misconfiguration doesn't go to production, right? You want to reduce the attack surface early, but you also want the developers to develop. So you got to make it automated. You got to make it
Yeah.
easy, right? Make security the easy thing.
Rapid feedback, right?
Exactly. So with that, right, I'll say it's a dynamic landscape ahead. It always is. It always will be. It's going to be, in my eyes, it's the attacking AI versus defending AI, right? The fight will continue on. You need to have the defense, you need the AI, the shift left, governance, discovery, automation. It's important to have visibility into your entire ecosystem if you want to protect it.
Yeah.
So,
And you're shifting left and right? We're getting very
right.
shifty.
Right.
Well, thanks, Dan. I think this was great. And our contact information I'll throw up here if any of you want to reach out to Dan or myself.
Awesome. I was just going to ask you to do that. Thank you so much, Jason.
Yeah. Thanks a
That
lot.
was
Happy to be here, guys.
yeah, that was really awesome. I especially hear what you're saying, Dan, about, don't just let somebody come in and set something up, even as somebody who, like, that's my job with the AppSec product, right? Like, we need the devs' help with our product because we understand exactly what you're saying. Like, we start with a spec from the devs for exactly that reason. You got to have a map. So completely echo everything you guys are talking about. And thanks again. You're